Welcome to Brave Words, true stories told well. I'm Adrienne Ferreira.
And I'm Rob Carlton. This week's storyteller is Nadia Townsend. She's an actor, a director and a dramaturg.
And today she's a storyteller and her story's called How the Light Falls.
Today, I can't appreciate the orange afternoon light and the patterns it makes on the wooden floor as it falls through the Venetians. All I can see is dust. There's an itch under every inch of my skin and a muscle being pulled from behind my eyeball to an unreachable place beneath my shoulder blade. A storm of discontent is rising up and threatening to spill over, leaving little room to deal with the sharp piece of Lego which has just indented the heel of my foot as I carry a pot of steaming vegetables to the sink. I'm prone to these dark turns, but today it's attached itself very specifically to my chosen field of work, or lack thereof. After 25 years in the acting game, I'm at the crossroads again, yearning for an imaginary life far, far away. I lean on the kitchen bench for support and stare down the drain as if it has the answer. At the table with my 4-year-old son, he shoves 3 pieces of large broccoli into his mouth and chews loudly, his cheeks at full capacity. I sit opposite him, but my mind is elsewhere. Mum, I'm sprinting through the corridors of the past, kicking boxes full of regret. I should never have said no to that play. I should have stayed in the theatre. I should have stayed in New York. I see that tiny room just off Bleecker Street where I was bunked in with my best friend, the studio where we trained and indulged in epiphanies and truth and what makes humans do what they do. That anorexic ballerina from Juilliard who kept stealing the Tim Tams our mum sent over. The day I sprinted along the Hudson, trying to shake off that deep fear that I was going to be one of the millions of actors that never made it. I see the back of that set door and I hear the audience settling in as the house music goes down and the lights come up. My first ever paying audience. I see that moment on stage when everything was connected and oneness was never ending. I wince at that memory of that time I was too drunk in that foyer that time. I gasp at the thought of those years in network television on that toxic show, overwhelmed by a sense of responsibility about the dross we were spewing into the fabric of society each week. Maybe I took it too seriously. It was a pretty silly show. I definitely shouldn't have said that thing to that guy, the one with all the power. I see our night of nights, the Logies, standing amongst my freaky family, those carny folk all sparkly and making speeches, the ceremony always a little too long and overwhelmingly awkward. I let out a rueful laugh. My son, he looks up at me and he attempts to spoon a precarious amount of rice into his mouth. I see that outfit, the one that earned me worst dressed and best dressed simultaneously. I've never really understood fashion or cared enough about my hair. I was definitely too opinionated for a young woman in the early 2000s and absolutely, mostly too drunk. Was I arrogant? Mum, I see those stone studios in rural France and working with those theatre monks to reveal the essence of humanity through the purity of the voice. I held hard to the possibility of the craft and headed towards the light and found it on occasion. Although the illumination flared brightly, it died quickly, leaving only an indentation of longing, the work so brutally sporadic. There's always an attempt to make a life outside those rare and short-lived acting jobs, but if you are defined by what you do and you can't do what you do, then you are nothing. And then misery and self-loathing just become another part-time job. An actor needs a play, a stage, an ensemble, an audience. But here I sit alone. Mum? Yeah. I snap to attention and notice there's more rice on the floor than in his bowl. I take a long swig of my non-alcoholic beer and yearn for a chance to dive into a full-strength schooner. Slowly disappearing as the world comes into soft focus, and that internal monologue, the one that whispers, "You've wasted your life," is silenced. I see that twinkling Mecca, Los Angeles, many years earlier at the age of 31. I'm sitting on a slanted rooftop overlooking the city of dreams, halfway through a case of beer. I debate with an actor friend who's lived there too long what the magic formula is, why any one person over another. I've already lost too many good years, and I'm wondering, at what point do you cut your losses and walk away and save what's left? What the fuck am I doing here? I cry out. My actor friend leans back and begins to monologue. We actors, all of us, swim around in a big murky pond of, let's just say, shit. We swim as if our lives depend on it because out there in the dark somewhere is a teeny weeny little hole. One of us will, by chance, happen upon that hole and get shot down a portal and pooped out onto a stage and work for a moment, and a light will be shone upon that person. They won't really know why it was them and not that other guy, and sometimes they'll get confused and believe it was because they are in some way special. He laughs heartily, cracks open another beer and continues. And then before we know it, we are back in the shit again, swimming around in the dark as if our lives depend on it, looking for that teeny weeny little hole until we die. He leans back, accepting his fate. I stare towards the real stars, their twinkle obscured by the city lights. Am I just another desperate tadpole in a pool of shit who never happened upon the poop hole? Is that the gamble I took? Is that the pokey machine I fed my youth to? Surely I couldn't have been that stupid. I'm so stupid, so stupid. Mum, yeah. I've wandered off again. My son asks me why there's a flea in the sky. I tell him it's a fruit fly. He asks if we need to get it some fruit. I explain that it's probably come for the pears that are on the bench or the banana. I look at the fruit sitting there, sagging over its use-by date. Mum, yeah. Is your heart dark? Is my heart dark? Yeah. He looks at me with that unfiltered gaze. I stare at him in awe. This child, does he see me so clearly? I feel tears begin to surface. Yeah, baby, I guess it is a little dark at the moment. Why did you ask me that? Ask what? He looks out the window and swings his legs. If my heart was dark, duck. I said duck. He aims for his mouth with the rice mostly missing. Duck, not dark, I confirm. Yeah, duck. Is your heart duck? As in quack. Yeah. He pushes a book smeared with cereal towards me. Can you read this? I pull myself up and prepare to bring the fullness of my acting chops to the task. The story is about a young cow, a musician, who wants to leave her rural town and join a big city orchestra. Her family don't want her to go. Uncle Cow, he steps in and tells them all that this young cow niece, she's a great talent and will one day make it, and they must give her their blessing. I stop reading and I explain to my son that the concept of making it is bullshit. I use the word bullshit. Making it is a silly concept. It's a process of following a rainbow to get to a pot of gold, and the nature of the rainbow means that the closer you move towards a perceived pot of gold, the further away it gets. It's fundamentally flawed, I tell him. So there is no making it. It is an illusion, a fantasy. It's ridiculous for people to put that kind of pressure on each other or themselves. My son taps his finger on the book and says, "Read it, Mama." Sorry, I say. And I get back to the story. So the young cow, she goes to the city and auditions for an orchestra, but she gets rejected because she's a cow. She then finds a cow orchestra and they reject her because she's a brown cow and they're a black cow orchestra. Unable to find her place and confused about how being either a brown cow or a black cow has anything to do with music, she sits at a cafe and proceeds to get miserable. The waiter, who is a goat, inquires about what's making her sad, and she tells him the whole story. Funnily, he too is a rejected musician, and he suggests they start their own orchestra. They do, and it's an inclusive orchestra with all kinds of animals. I point out to my son that in the process of creating their own ensemble, they too have subjected a long line of animals with talent to the select and reject paradigm. I wonder out loud what their audition process was. By what philosophy are they holding themselves accountable? How could they run auditions and not become the very thing that threw them into such misery only days earlier? There's only so many places, even in the most inclusive of orchestras, I tell him. My son taps the book. Sorry, I say, and continue reading. They play in the big city orchestra competition and win. The end. I put the book down. I have one hand covering my face and the other pressed hard to my chest as if the pressure will stop the ache. Are you sad, Mama? Yeah, baby, I'm really sad. Why? I don't know. I guess I just feel really alone. You're not alone, Mama. Why, because I have you? Yeah. Well, that's true. Yeah, okay, Mama. He pats me on the leg and he wanders off. My heart of duckness grips till sleep comes. The next day, I watch the sun turn the sky from pink to gold. I'm mesmerised by the shadows dancing on the wall as the fig tree moves in the breeze. The storm has eased a little. My son is in my bed. He kept me up all night, but it's nice to be able to roll over and press my lips into his plump cheek. Mum, he wakes. Yeah. Are you a ninja? Yeah, sure, I can be a ninja. He tells me about a dream he had about where he was a ninja and he saved the day. That's a good dream, I tell him. Yeah, he says as he karate chops the air. That day, I reach for the life that is right in front of me. The smell of coffee, a visit from a rosella, my camellias in bloom, the sound of my son's voice. I take a seat at the ever-present crossroads and enjoy the view before the next storm rolls in.
It's such a wonderful example of a story not needing to have a resolution. A story can be about simply dropping into the confusion and the trouble, sitting in the trouble and trying to make a little bit more sense of it.
I love that story because to me it represents the complexity of modern life. We live in a world where our dreams feel so close, and every single one of them, it's like, oh, if I'm not doing that, why not? You know, I've got the means, I got this. And then the whole time, her son, Mum, over here, Mum, over here. And she's caught between this urge to be an actor, to be a creative, to be an artist, remembering those flashbacks, constantly going back. Young woman in New York, a bit of a drink, a bit of a party, talking with her friends. Oh, that excitement and that vim and verve when you're young. And then she's there being a mum and she's got this beautiful child there going, is your heart duck? And then I love that because it's so absurd.
I think too, it's such a great story about yearning, wanting to be everything that you feel you can offer, like wanting to give the world all of that and just not having the opportunity when you want it, when you want to have it. And yet you have all this other stuff around you in your life, all this other richness that you've also built and created.
She does a beautiful job there. There's such a funny moment. Mum, can you read me this? And I bringing the fullness of my acting chops to the task, reading the story of the cow to the son, and it's a job. But then she only gets a line into it before she's furious with the artistic premise.
Look, if you've got a story that you'd like to get down, or maybe you know someone who should be telling stories, you should be starting to write, check out the website, the Brave Words website. I'm running courses all year round, and if you're sort of wondering maybe what to get somebody for Christmas, a voucher could be a good idea.
Is that bravewords.com or .com.au?
.com.au.
It's .com.au. If you're enjoying these sorts of stories, I'm actually touring my show Virgin in a Knife Fight all around the country next year. I'm premiering in January in Perth at the Perth Fringe Festival. I'll be doing a Western Australian tour, Adelaide Fringe, Newcastle Fringe, Canberra Comedy, Melbourne Comedy, an East Coast tour. Oh, and while I've got you, I'm also doing a double header with Donna Reston. Now, I think probably the next story you're going to hear is a Donna story. She's the most extraordinary woman. We love listening to her stories. And so I'm doing a double header with Donna Reston in Gosford, early 2026. It's actually January 9 and 10. So she's doing her one-woman show, and I'm doing my one-man show. Now, her show is going to be bedded in and beautiful. I've seen it before, and it's an absolute ripper. I'm doing early previews. So if you want to get tickets to both of those shows, you can actually get a little discount if you buy tickets to two. Definitely try and get along to a couple of those if you can.
And that's going to be at the fabulous Funhouse Factory in Gosford.
That's right. So, I think that brings us to the end of this little contribution of the Brave Words podcast.
See you next time.
Bye.